Bob food. Bob food. You know, bug out bag food. That's what the cool kids call it. Bob food. Or Bobby's food. But seriously, that's what we're going to talk about today on Alpha Male Podcast. The podcast where we talk about what it means to be a man. The right way, with God at the center. Judeo-Christian values. Strong, dominant, made in His image. We don't apologize for that. Stand up. Be strong and prove yourself a man. The way that you were created. I'm going to forego the lengthy bio. I'm even going to forego the normal stuff that I mentioned. And we'll just get into the topic. Let's just talk about bug out bag food. Now this came up in the Patreon chat. And I've also seen other people go over at Pastor Joe Fox, Viking Preparedness. I'm a patron of his. Have been for a long time. And he asked about it and asked for suggestions. I made some content. Anyway, I made a YouTube video about it. I don't make a lot of YouTube videos. I'm primarily a podcaster if you look at the hours of podcasting versus videos. But I was out in the backcountry and I was eating, so I figured why not make a bug out bag food video that is on YouTube. That YouTube channel is Good Shepherd Training. But I thought a long form would be better. Now, my diet is normal to me, but weird to most people. Long before I remember hearing the term keto or paleo, or long before those were cool buzzwords, but long before Instagram existed, I started going down that road. And I kind of started going down that road because my wife kind of calls me a hippie with a gun, but I just kind of saw the garbage that it has become the American diet and all this refined stuff and genetically modified, like corn. You can't tell me that splicing corn and fish genes together and having me eat that is normal and okay, and that I should be okay with that. I'm just not going to believe that. Things like that. So I got away from those kind of normal refined grains, and then I went to whole wheat, and then I went to like ancient grains because I don't do the research for yourself. Look into it for yourself, but I just looked it up to verify again, and there have been, well, look into it for yourself, but there's a lot of studies that show that what we eat today as wheat is very different than its original ancient wheat. Anyway, so I started going down the ancient grain thing, and then I started going down a different path, and this, again, is long before I remember hearing the term keto, but, okay, I don't believe in evolution, like different species being created. I think that's garbage. I think that's a theory that's more faith-based religion than actually reading the Bible and believing what it says. Yeah, animals can change over time. My Rhodesian Ridgeback was once a wolf, but he's still a dog. And if he breeds with another dog, he's going to create a dog. He's not going to create a cat, no matter how much you breed him. And I didn't come from a monkey, and you didn't either. That's garbage. But that doesn't mean that I can't glean things from the way God made nature. God is the designer. He designed animals a certain way. He designed mammals a certain way to work a certain way. If I look at animals, there are animals that eat grain and grass, and they can be very strong, like an ox or, a horse. But they all have really big bellies, big stomachs. I didn't want a big stomach. And at the time, I think when I was thinking this, I was doing really long distance endurance stuff, like 52 miles in a day. Some that short, but for a lot of people that's pretty long distance. I had read somewhere that a Zulu, or heard somewhere that a Zulu warrior would go 50 miles in a day. So I planned a course that happened to be 52 miles, but I worked up to that. I figured if a Zulu can do 52 miles in a day, a great warrior in history, why can't I do that? So I did it. But in that process, it just, for those amount of calories, I went to a very high fat diet, and it worked really well. Just kind of everything got better as far as health and diet and strength and body fat percentage going down. It's kind of one of those, I don't know if there's a word for it, but my wife and I were discussing this the other day. She has her master's degree in health, exercise, and sports science. I don't know that there is a word for this. Perhaps there is, but it's kind of counterintuitive is the best word that I can think of. Like, eating fat does not make one fat. People thought that. That's why the whole low-fat diet was a craze, but that's not the way that it works. Eating sugar will make one fat. Eating large quantities of empty carbohydrates will make one fat. In general, eating fat does not make one fat. Kind of one of those counterintuitive things. But I went on this high fat, high protein because I still needed protein to build muscle, and I still needed fat for the energy. And I found that life was better for me going to fat. Now, it probably took a couple of weeks or a couple of months to get used to that. But been on that diet for, seven-ish years now. And I started slowly going down that road, but I'd say pretty hardcore for 7-ish years or so. That's my diet. So I'm going to give you that caveat. I'm going to tell you what I eat. I'm not telling you that you have to eat that stuff or that you can't eat whatever you want to eat, but I'm telling you that forms a lot of basis for my bug out bag food. Again, not trying to convert you, right? I don't care. It's not a matter of salvation. You can eat whatever you want. You want to pack honey buns, which is one of the things that the guys in the chat wanted to pack for their survival food. Okay. I'm not here to convert you. I'm going to start with what I pack, but I needed to talk a little bit about the diet that I have and why I pack those things. But kind of and really good Nature's, and again, hippie with a gun, right? But this might ruin my street cred if it gets out on gunfighter life. But natural foods that are really good prepper bug out bag foods. Nuts, legumes, right? Let's not get all technical about whether it's a nut or it's a legume, but peanuts. Peanuts are kind of king because they have really good caloric yield. They're high in calories, high in fat, high in protein. They're really good for you, and they're not expensive. They're, very cheap. This is one of the questions. This is one of the deep philosophical things we talk about in the Patreon group chat, a tribe of like-minded men. If all the nuts, legumes were the same price, let's say they were $2 a pound, which one would you eat the most? That's a pretty cool thought experiment. I think mine would be cashews. Perhaps Brazil nuts. Perhaps I just think that because they're more expensive. But peanuts are way cheaper than most other nuts most of the time, unless you catch something on sale. And peanuts are really good. They last a long time. You can eat them, Oscar Mike, on the move. You don't need a little jet boil stove. You don't need a spoon. You don't need anything. You need your hands. I guess you don't even need that. You could put your face in the bag. But you get the idea. You could make like a feed bag and just walk down the trail with it and eat as you're going. But, yeah. Nuts, legumes, peanuts, almonds. I hear a lot of Middle Eastern cultures like that's one of the things they do when they were taking their long country, cross-country treks back in the day across deserts on long journeys. And it makes a lot of sense. They store really well on their own, right? You don't need any kind of freeze-dried mountain house, $5 a piece freeze-dried ice cream sandwich. Peanuts are better in almost every way, and they're cheaper. So, yeah. Peanuts, again, because they're cheap, but almonds, cashews, walnuts. I'm not going to list every single nut on here, but you get the idea. Nuts, high in fat, high in protein, really, really good. They make up a large chunk of my diet normally, and a large chunk of my life. I'm living off-grid right now. My wife and I live as neo-nomads. If you don't know, we travel a lot. Nuts are a big part of my diet. Peanut butter is too, but it's less suitable. Not saying you can't do it, but it's less suitable for bug-out bag food, and I sometimes take it. And I usually don't take a spoon or anything. I'll just break off a stick and eat it with a stick. And you still have the jar and stuff to deal with. I don't like leaving trash behind. Call me a hippie, but I don't like destroying the beautiful wilderness of nature. When I go out hiking in nature, I like to go somewhere and not see any trash. So I try to leave it that way. Love your neighbor as yourself. Being a good steward of the land. And I could pack it in and pack it out, and sometimes I do. But just the regular nuts themselves. Less processing, less extra stuff, really easy, easier to eat. If you do want to pack the peanut butter, another thing you can do is mix in protein powder with it. If you want a little bit higher protein to fat ratio, you can mix in some protein powder with the peanut butter, and that works really well. That's a normal thing that I'll eat anyway, backcountry or not. But nuts are really good. Legumes are really good for bug-out bag food. You could throw them in there, literally keep my bag packed, and I'll generally take out some stuff and put some stuff in for whatever thing I'm doing out in the backcountry. But I have a bag, right? I don't have like my inch bag and my urban survival bag and my hunting bag. I do a lot of, big game hunting, been a professional big game hunter and guide. I have a big bag. It does all that, right? And I'll throw nuts in there, like a giant bag of almonds. I recently decided to start eating that really big bag because it was a year old. You know what? Those nuts are fine. They're just fine. Almonds, they've been in there. And for that reason, they're really good. You could likely throw a thing of peanuts or almonds in there and forget about them for years, and they'd be just fine to eat. Another big part of my diet is cocoa. And I don't mean chocolate like milk chocolate. I don't mean like dark chocolate where it's 60% cocoa and 40% garbage that you're not supposed to be eating. I mean 100% cocoa. 100% cocoa bar, 100% cocoa powder. I'll generally take the powder and mix it with some kind of oil again because I like the fat, but the cocoa powder itself has fat, has protein, has fiber, and I'll mix that with coconut oil or peanut oil. And it also stores longer. Don't have to worry about it melting as much. But cocoa powder, really good for that. Cocoa powder doesn't weigh much. It's fairly calorie dense. You can store it, especially if you're wise about the kind of container. If you want to mix it with water, you can just mix it with water. You make like a 100% cocoa concoction with just creek water. Now, this is not candy. This is not a sweet treat. I've often let people try this kind of chocolate when I'm eating it, and they almost always make a really horrible face. It's not what you would expect. If you're expecting like a chocolate bar, that is not what this is. But 100% cocoa, that's a big part of my diet. When it's legal and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg, I like to hunt and fish and forage for a large part of my diet, which is a whole nother thing. But high quality protein is good. I like to kill my own meat when I can, catch my own meat when I can. But that's really its own video. But lean protein, I like to make my own jerky, make my own biltong. If you buy that stuff in the store, turn around and read the label. The vast majority of that stuff, if you look, actually has more sugar than protein. So you're eating candy. You're eating junk. It is junk food. Most jerky that you see. It is meat candy. It is not meat. It is candied meat. So just realize that. But you can make your own jerky really easy. You don't need a fancy dehydrator. If you have an oven, you can literally just put a wooden spoon in the top so it vents out. Put it on its lowest setting. Slay yourself a beast of lean game meat, elk, deer, and cut it into thin strips and lay it in the oven. Put some tin foil down if you have a lady in your life so she does not go crazy and get super mad because there's blood all over the bottom of the oven. But it doesn't take a whole lot. And rub it down with whatever you want. I like salt and vinegar. That's my favorite flavor, but you can do ghost pepper. I also really like that. Do whatever you want. And it'll be cheaper, easier, better, healthier in almost every way than what you buy at the store. So you can make your own jerky. You can also make your own biltong. That's like the alpha male version of jerky. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of how to make this stuff, but good lean meat, also a good thing. But if I'm out in the backcountry, it's a lot easier to get meat than high quality fat. So when I'm packing stuff, I tend to go heavier on the fat for that reason. I can get supplemented meat. It's harder to find good quality fat. Most game is very lean. Look at the amount of fat on an elk. It's pretty lean. There are exceptions like salmon and stuff, but again, for the most part, pretty lean. Duck and waterfowl also a very good source of really high quality fat. But you might want to pack some protein. A thing that I like to pack is sardines. I prefer them in oil because they weigh about the same and I get more calories and I can add that oil to other supplemental meat. But sardines in oil. That's a good easy one to pack. They're pretty flat, they pack pretty well, and the cool thing about those little sardine cans is they shove into a lot of places in your pack where you can't really fit anything else, but you can shove a sardine can or two in there. So they're kind of handy that way. My caution for that is, like right now I am in Bear. I'm on the upper Idaho, Montana, Canada border area. There's both kinds of bears. There's wolves, there's mountain lions, coyotes. So that's, if you've ever opened a can of sardines and eaten them, they smell quite a bit. So my advice to that is eat them right before you're leaving camp, going to your next camp. And still take your trash, but maybe burn it in the fire. It's metal to get rid of some of that scent before you transport it. Because, they smell really potent. But sardines and oil, that's another really good one. You can also just pack straight up oil if you want. I'll often put oil on my dog's food. My dog often hikes with me. That's probably a whole other episode of what he packs. He has his own. He has 2 bags. He has more bags than me. He has 2 doggy backpacks because he peed on one in the store, and I thought the honorable thing to do was to buy it, even though he already had one. So he has 2. I only have 1 big bag. But we put oil on his food a lot. He's a high activity dog. Like we just went for a ruck last night. I have Rhodesian Ridgeback. He loves his exercise, but often to get more calories, I'll do the same thing for him. I'll add oil. I'll add good healthy fat on his food. Something you can do, you can add oil to whatever food you're bringing to add up the calories, right? Unless you're trying to lose weight or something. If you're talking about survival, the biggest bang for your buck, and this is off the top of my head, but fat, like oil, has twice the calories, more than twice the calories per weight as protein or carbohydrates. So if you're going for calorie dense, fat is your moneymaker right there. So again, you can add oil to whatever you might want. Okay, let's transition away from like the keto, paleo, whatever the cool kids are calling it, to other stuff that you can pack. A big one, literally it's big as far as space goes, but it's lightweight ramen noodles. I heard a story of a girl that lived for years on just ramen noodles, or Top Ramen. I don't know if the brand matters. I just looked it up and the story popped up. UK girl survives on instant noodle only diet for 13 years. I'm not advising you do that. I don't imagine she was the healthiest. I don't imagine she had the best VO2 max out there. But that demonstrates that it's a decent survival food, right? She survived on it for 13 years. Now, you don't need a jet boil. You want to go glamping and have a jet boil, a little stove in your bug out bag. I think that's wasted weight. But if you want to, that's fine. You can just get the pack of ramen noodles. I learned this from millennials, right? You can just tear open the seasoning packet, shake it out on the noodles, and eat them like a giant cracker. You can literally do that. So you don't need something fancy. If you want to eat it on the go, you're rucking. I probably want some water to drink with it, and be advised it's going to swell up a little bit. So don't eat it at the end of a big meal. But if you just eat the ramen noodles with the seasoning packet on there, it's got the same amount of calories, right? It's not like you get more calories when you cook it. So all the potential calories in that meal are there. So dump that seasoning packet on there and eat it like a big cracker. And again, they're a little bit big, but they don't weigh much at all. And if you're looking for a survival storage food, that's a great one if you have extra space like in a pantry. Again, they don't weigh very much. Why not have a case or 2 of those? Again, I don't eat that stuff day to day, but it's a good survival food. And if you eat carbs anyway, I mean, they're super cheap. And most people like them, especially kids. They're an easy thing. So there is that. Also, things like dry crackers. They last a long time. And I don't have any sponsors. Obviously, these are not any of my sponsors. But Wheat Thins or Triscuits or Goldfish or Cheez-Its. Whatever you want. Any of those things. They're basically dry wheat crackers. The original version of that, and I think the best version of that, the OG bug out food, the original bug out, the original big bug out, the great Exodus from the book of Exodus in the Bible, matzah. It's giant. Well, I don't know what size they have, but you can get it in just giant sheets. That stuff lasts forever. We had a bunch of it just living nomadically that we didn't even seal up or anything. And we had it for over a year and it was just fine. We used it for communion. So we'd break off a little piece when we were doing communion. I'm talking like a little wafer-sized piece just for communion. Somebody got us a pack of it and it lasted us through an entire year from like Passover to well after another Passover. And we didn't seal it in a bag or anything like that. And we were in all kinds of climates from Florida to Arizona to Michigan to Idaho. And it was just fine. Didn't even need to be in a sealed pack. So matzah, like the OG bug out food. You can get matzah. You don't have to be Jewish to eat matzah. You are supposed to be circumcised to keep Passover. So keep that in mind. But just to eat matzah, I'm not aware of any regulations. You can eat matzah. And it's good. It's just, again, I don't eat it day to day as a meal. I'll have a little bit for communion. But it's just basically hardtack. If you've ever heard of like the survival food of hardtack. Which is basically today a dog biscuit. Now here is a good thing, I think a good metric for if you're thinking about, I'm not ragging on people, you put whatever you want in there. You want to live on RC Colas and moon pies in the apocalypse, that's on you. Here would be a good litmus test. Is what you're packing more or less nutritious than a dog biscuit, than a milk bone? Right? Look at the nutritional value of a milk bone for a dog. How much more valuable are you than a dog? And I love my dog, but humans are more valuable. Why are you feeding yourself something less nutritious than a milk bone? So probably look at that when you're looking to pack your bug out bag food. And these are some good, easy things to pack for food, but I don't necessarily think you need to go out and get exactly what I'm telling you, but think about it as the concepts. Here's some concepts you should think about for bug out bag food. I encourage you to keep your bug out food in your vehicle, because I encourage you to keep your bug out bag in your vehicle. If you have to bug out, you're probably, at least at first, taking your vehicle, and if not, you're probably where your vehicle is. If something bad happens and you can't make it back home and your bug out bag is in your house, it might as well be on the moon, because it is of no relevance to you, right? So bug out bags, I think, should be in your car. So that being said, food that will not deteriorate and make a giant mess in your vehicle, no matter wherever you live, right? If you live in Georgia, it's going to get pretty hot. If you live in Alberta, Canada, it's going to get really cold. So keep that in mind. But things like peanuts, right? They'll be fine. So that's a major consideration. Will they be good long-term in adverse conditions? Also another one, minimal packing. Because if you backpack, if you ruck as part of your life, right, as I do, weight is important. And why carry around that extra weight, right? I don't want a giant bunch of dead weight in there. That's why I don't carry a stove or anything when I can just make a fire. So extra weight, things that need to be cooked, all that stuff, you don't really need that. So minimal extra weight. The bulk of that, right, in calories. And stuff that stores a long time. And no matter what diet you have, something that you'll eat that's fairly nutritious. Some other things you might want to pack in there are multivitamins, right? Because even if you procure more calories, a lot of times that food is lacking in certain nutrients. Talk about bang for your buck, multivitamins. How much do multivitamins weigh? Not very much. You can pack a lot of multivitamins. So I'd recommend you having multivitamins in your pack. Not the gummies. Again, I'm not a big fan of sugar and carbs anyway, but because they'll melt and turn into a giant glob. But just regular multivitamins, right? Flintstone vitamins, if you want. I don't care. But multivitamins, a good, easy thing to have in your bug out bag food. More than the specific brand, like I'm not telling you to go out and buy a box of Triscuits and a giant, jar of peanuts. You do you, but the concepts is what I want you to take away and apply to whatever you like and want to eat. Again, there is a video on this. That the channel is Good Shepherd Training. That's also the website, goodshepherdtraining.com, but the YouTube channel is Good Shepherd Training. If you want to see a video, it's shorter than this. This is a long format. But if you want to see me actually out in the Bitterroot, Idaho, Montana wilderness area, pulling food out of my bag, there is that. Don't feel like you have to. I'm humbled and blessed that you listen. Thank you. If you want to become an active part of the tribe, consider going to Patreon. There should be a Patreon link in the show notes. They get all kinds of cool insider content. They get a lot more video content as well. I don't really have a desire to be YouTube famous. There's a reason I primarily do the podcast, and I'll use the YouTube to funnel people here. And if there's something that really helps demonstrating visually, I'll sometimes do a video. But by and large, podcaster. If you want to be an active member of the tribe, like if you want to be part of that chat where we talk about stuff like this all the time, philosophy and theology more importantly, and guns and bug out food, and what's your favorite flavor of Blue Diamond almonds, whatever. Just a tribe of like-minded men. That's one of the benefits. Another is the more Video content are Patreon only episodes. I share my actual real world bug out locations on there, like GPS coordinates all over the country from years of living as a nomad with notes and notations. Anyway, there's just a few of the things on there, but mostly do it because you want to be a member of the tribe and you want to support. And there should be a Patreon link in the show notes. With that, the tactical tip of the day. We mentioned briefly about fish, but if you're fishing and you're fishing in the backcountry for survival, it's not that I can't fillet a fish. I can, but if calories count for you, what I recommend that you do is simply scale the fish and gut the fish and leave it whole, minus the guts, minus the offal. Does a couple of things. One, you can just run a stick through its gills and hang it over a fire as long as you're careful and it doesn't fall apart. You don't cook it too long. That's a really easy way to cook it. Also, you're keeping good parts of the fish. This might gross you out, but some of my favorite parts of the fish are the cheeks. The cheeks are really good on fish. Also, you can eat the eyeballs. Talking about different nutrients. You'll waste a lot of that fish if you fillet it. It's one thing if you're going to a fancy restaurant or you're making salmon Alfredo at home or something, and you don't want the bones in the way. But I think in a survival situation where the calories count, eating the whole thing and pulling the bones out of your mouth so that all the meat is there, you're not wasting parts of the meat with the bone, those calories add up. So, and survival in a lot of environments is a mathematical equation of calories in versus calories out. So that's my tactical tip. You're gonna catch fish in the backcountry and eat them for survival, keep it whole. Gut it, take out the offal, scale it, and that's pretty much it. Less is more when it comes to that because you'll get more calories. Less processing, more calories. That's your tactical tip of the day, your tactical verse of the day. There is nourishment more important than food and water. And that is Jesus Christ. From John 6, whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never thirst. Talking about communion, God is that bread of life. When he goes to the woman at the well, he talks about being living water. Let's make sure in life we're focusing on what's really important. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.